Audit readiness in government contracting is very important. And what I find when I'm talking with government contractors is they often wait too late to prepare for it. And what I mean by waiting too late is they wait until they've been in business 5, 10, 20 years, and they want to pursue a large initiative. And then they reach out to an auditing firm, a contracting consultant, and they say, I want to pursue a contract, and I'm now realizing I need audited rates, or I now realize I need audited books. I now realize I need policies and procedures. And then they need to put all these things in place. When the time to do this is in the beginning, and a lot of people feel like, well, I'm just getting started. I don't need all those things. That is the perfect time to do it. The perfect time to do it is in the beginning, when you're starting out. It gives you organization and structure. It helps free your mind from confusion. Becoming audit ready helps alleviate the panic and confusion that a lot of new business owners start with. And it also helps strengthen your position as a government contractor. And it helps strengthen your position to go after large contracts. Audit readiness is the ability to scale at an exponential rate. Instead of waiting until year 5 or year 6 to go after a multi-million dollar contract, you could potentially pursue that contract in year 2 or year 4. Instead of waiting until year 5 and year 10 to become an 8A certified company, you could potentially do it in year 2 or year 4. However, let's start with the definition of audit readiness. Audit readiness is simply, and I'm just coming up with a simple definition for the purpose of this podcast discussion, for this 30-minute discussion. Audit readiness is the ability to go through a review of your systems, your policies, and your accounting to ensure that you're following the regulations that you are supposed to adhere to with minimal impact to your business and with minimal impact to the government. What does that mean? No one is expecting you to be 100% all the time. However, what people are expecting you to be is somewhere in the ballpark. People want to at least expect you to have the basics when it comes to awarding contracts. Some agencies have what they call desk audits before they even award you a contract after you have won the award. I'm going to say this again. You can be awarded the contract and still lose it because you have to pass a desk audit. And the desk audit is simply provide me with your chart of accounts, provide me with your policies and procedures, provide me with your rates. So, the purpose of this podcast episode is to discuss and to prepare you and to get you audit ready. Understanding the regulatory requirements of audit readiness is to familiarize yourself with the relevant government contracting regulations and guidelines, such as FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations, DFARS, Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplements, and DFARS come into play if you plan to pursue contracts with the Department of Defense, NIH, the National Institution of Health, because they do tend to cross path with the Defense Department. If you do NASA, those are some agencies you tend to run. Veterans Administration. Those are some agencies that tend to use FAR and DFAR. CAS, the cost accounting standards. All contracts aren't CAS covered. You need to be aware of when CAS comes into play. You have to develop internal controls and procedures. Just doing what you want when you want does not make a good government contractor. And it does not make the government want to award you large government contracts. So initially, your internal controls could simply just be a the ability to say, I have a bookkeeper. As time goes by, it could be hiring somebody to handle your accounts payable and you review those accounts payable on a monthly or quarterly basis. Documenting your processes. How do you handle everything? And having those processes in your head is not documentation. As your business grows, things get lost in the hectic and the time consuming nature of boarding and onboarding of contracts, people, all the many moving parts, and trying to remember all of those things in every conversation is a burden no person should put on themselves. Write it down. Even if you intend to only have a one person shop, write it down for your sake. So you can go back and review how you intended to do things. And if you no longer wanted to do that way, then document the change and keep going. And take that burden off of yourself that you must remember all things for everyone. That is why we have drives, Google Drive, Dropbox. Write all these policies, procedures down, store them somewhere so that as you hire people, you can direct them to your policies and procedures, make them aware, have a checkoff system that they read them, sign off that they read them and they are aware of them, and then you can go forward. One of the major audit procedures as you grow in government contracting is training. And one of the trainings is around policies and procedures. We're all familiar with the trope ignorance of the law does not absolve us of breaking the law. Well, ignorance of policies and procedures does not absolve you of breaking a policy and procedure. So, having them written down and having them in a place where your employees can refer to them is a way to ensure that anyone who comes onto your company to support that project can go back and reference that policy and procedure. They can reference how your company handles certain situations. That way, they are not independently deciding how things should be handled. They are not required to remember a conversation that was held on day one 2 years later, and you are not required to remember how you told them you wanted something to be done. All of these things are done to protect you, the company, the employee, and the government. Conducting regular training, I touched on this, but we're going to keep going, and provide comprehensive training to your staff is a part of compliance, it's a part of internal controls, and it's a part of audit preparedness, ensuring that the employees understand their roles and responsibilities within the contract and within the company. And maintaining the records is important. I cover that in a section of my book, Keys to Government Contracting, and it's often overlooked, by government contractors, but it's very important. Assessments are important, and assessments are important because it helps you identify potential risks. And assessments are important because it helps you promote from within. Now, this is not an audit readiness. However, I'm bringing this in because it can help you get ahead or stay ahead. And I'm going to address this in another podcast episode entitled Building Your Organization. So stay tuned for that episode where we're talking about assessments and how it ties back. Establishing the way in which you want to communicate internally and how you wish to communicate externally is key. And communication internally is important from the standpoint of this: what should be kept and what shouldn't be kept. I'll never forget when I was working in corporate America. We were undergoing a DCAA audit, and we had bought some smaller companies. And what was kept in the files to support the files was inadequate to support the cost. So I went back to the stakeholder, and the stakeholder is the person responsible for the records. And I asked them, did they have any other records to support the cost being audited? And they didn't. So then I asked them who else was around for that project. So I went down a rabbit hole and I eventually found the records I needed. However, it was an accident I found the records. Why was it an accident? The person kept the records because they felt the records should be kept, and not because they were told to keep the records. And his words were, there was just no communication about what should or shouldn't be kept. So he kept everything. And that's basically what he said. So communicating what should be kept as a matter of record for the audit is important. And that needs to be communicated internally. And it should be a part of, if not your policies and procedure, as a part of the desktop procedures. I talk about that in Keys to Government Contracting. Somewhere you need to have a communications manual, a communications log, a, a team meeting that talks about what needs to be documented, how it needs to be documented. If not in the actual policy, in the desktop procedures for that area. All of this goes back to audit readiness. So that when the auditor does come in, it makes the audit less painful. Most people are afraid of the auditor because there's this fear of, I didn't do something right. However, when you walk into an audit from the position of, I've put things in order, I have done everything within my power to walk in the fullness of understanding my responsibility, it takes the stress off the situation. Then you can stand in the driver's seat of the audit. Because there are things the auditor may ask for that they're not entitled to. And that happens far more than people realize. And just because an auditor asks you for things does not mean they're entitled to them. So understanding the scope of the audit, understanding the engagement letter that the auditor sent to you, understanding what you are required to provide, what you can choose to provide, and understanding the stages of the audit itself. Understanding the power of the auditor, because some auditors will have you believe they have this carte blanche and they do not. Understanding the role you play in the audit, the role the auditor plays, the role the contracting officer plays. Everybody has their position in the audit. And understanding what position everyone plays is key, is paramount to getting through the audit. Understanding that if you are not prepared, understanding if your systems and your policies and your processes are not where they're supposed to be, it can be costly and timely to correct them. So, not wanting to invest on the front end can cost you time and money on the back end. So is it better to spend 100,000 and 90,000 or whatever to get it right on the front end? Or do you wish to possibly spend 200, 300,000 on the back end to correct it, plus potentially lose out on contracts because you did not pass the audit? If you're unwilling to invest in proper audit readiness, what does that say about your willingness to complete the contract? And somebody may audit that may argue that's two different things, and I argue it is the same thing. You don't want to invest 100,000 to win a $3 million contract. I say it's the same thing. Return on investment. Are you committed to the commitment? Or are you committed to the idea of commitment? Audit readiness. When was the last time you reviewed your policies and procedures? Was it the day they were written? Or have you reviewed them in the last 12 months? When was the last time you reviewed your team? And I'm not talking about employees in your review. I mean to ensure that you have the right players in the right positions. Who will be the point of contact for the audits? This is all a part of audit readiness. Who will be the point of contact for the audit in each area? Who will walk the auditor around for a floor check? Is your team ready for a floor check audit? How will you handle a virtual floor check? Are you prepared for a virtual floor check? Did you know that the government performs virtual floor checks? Or have I told you something new? Did you know that the government on some contracts requires the employee to be on site? Are you aware that your rates for some agencies must use certain bases and that those bases have to be audited? And are you aware that some agencies don't care what base you use? So that means that you use different bases. Are you aware that at audit that you're asked, why did you choose that base? And to just randomly say, well, this government agency says use this base, so I'll just use it for everybody, may be a red flag to the government. Having multiple rates just because you have multiple contracts is a red flag to the government because it tells the government that you do not understand government contracting and rate development. Do you have a proposal development process? All of this is a part of audit ready because all of your processes are subject to audit. So, to wrap it all up, and in summary, you must continue to monitor the landscape of the industry. You must continue to stay aware of the rules and regulations that are coming out. When are you subject to audit? What policies and procedures are out there that you must keep current? When do you need to bring in a consultant to assist you with these things? When do you hire somebody to take over these things? And when do you do both? These are all the questions that you have to ask yourself in order to determine your audit readiness. Whew. I hope you enjoyed this segment on audit readiness on Contractors Conversation. I wanted to just touch on this because this is so important for the contracting community, no matter what level of government contracting you're at. You have to keep on your radar that the auditor can and most likely will at some point in time knock on your door. So you must always ask yourself the question, are you audit ready? And if you the answer to that question is no, then you must become audit ready. Because not being audit ready can hinder your growth and lock you out of millions. Reach out to us. We can help you become audit ready. LTACG.as.me. Book a session and we can help you. Tune in to the next episode of Contractors Conversation. I'm your host, Luciana Turner. We'll see you next time.